A rooftop dinner in Nepal's congested capital Kathmandu led to this film. My host, Kem Thapa, introduced me to Hemlal Pun, a retired army major. Hem became permanently injured after a dramatic ambush some time before Nepal's decade-long civil war ended in 2006. He told that while being hospitalized, his family farm was occupied by the Maoist guerrillas. His aging sister Maya, who runs the farm, was displaced. I got impressed by Hem's dignity and forgiving nature. This man radiated a strong determination to promote peace through reconciliation and development.
No one has bothered so far. I applied twice to my organizations, then to the Ministry of Defense. Everywhere. No one bothers.
When Hem invited me to his beloved Barsa, a Magar village famous for its elite Gurkha soldiers, I happily accepted. I returned to Nepal some months later to travel with Hem and Kem to Barsa. We immediately started hectic preparations for our journey. During our preparations, I got interested in exploring Barsa's history. This history, Hem assured me, was not only about hardships, but also about internal communal solidarity and proud martial religious traditions.
The agent is called Gallawala.
Gallawala.
They used to come to village and lure the young boys, saying, okay, do you want to go to the army to see the world? Have an experience, you want to go, travel by train or by ship? Okay, you will have good food and you will have a life of a real man when you're in.
Even the Gallawala, they used to give the money to the young chaps to join the British army.
And intriguingly, while laying in the hill region where the Maoist uprising started in 1995, the villagers of Barsa remained not only unsupportive of the Maoists, but also refused to become informant of the security forces. More surprisingly, Barsa had not experienced a single gunfire or killing during the decade-long war. How come? We planned for a round trip which would take us from the capital down to the lowland city of Butwal near the Indian border, then up to the historic hill town Tansen, and onward to Barsa in western Nepal, and back finally to Kathmandu. We wanted to first stop at the ambush site and later to meet some people who had agreed to share with us their wartime experiences. While chatting in the bus and viewing the passing countryside, I wondered how it will be for him to be back for the first time at the place where he was nearly killed.
Two leading vehicles were ambushed here. Then one of the commander, he called me on radio, said that they were ambushed.
So you were in
and this ambush was supposed to be quite deliberate ambush. They were firing from from this area, from that side also. I felt that my leg was just like this. All of a sudden, yeah.
It's kind of just...
Then
With an enormous force, huh?
So this is my experience here, my life. Physically has changed definitely, mentally of course, because once the human
At the time, what I put, I can remember this.
We continued forward Jalbra and arrived at dusk in Butwa. We were well received by Hem's relative and friends. They started telling us about their own painful experiences of torture, disappearances, and impunity. It dawned to me that sharing their tales of loss is a way of venting their pain. They seemed so desperately hoping that by doing so, somebody, someday might give them justice.
फर्स्ट चरणको कुरा गर्दैछु आर्मीले मलाई सिधै पसलमा लिएर गयो साला भन्छु भन्दैनस् माओवादी पुग्छ नि बाले मलाई 7 बजे हामी त्यहाँ पुग्यौँ त्यहाँ पुगिसकेपछि मेरा साहबले त्यो एउटा त्यो रिभल्भरको चाहिँ गोलीहरू सफा गर्दै खेलाउँदै गफ गर्दै हुनुहुन्थ्यो कि कस्तो तरिकाले गफ गर्दै हुनुहुन्थ्यो भने हेर्नुहोस् सुमणजी बदमास मान्छे भोलि पनि हाम्रो कब्जामा पर्छ निर्दोष मान्छे नमरोस् बदमास त फेरि पनि हामी समाज चाउने यो देश छोडेर कहाँ जान्छ र भन्दै रिभल्भर खेलाउँदै गर्नुहुन्थ्यो अनि मैले त्यहाँ तपाईँहरू खाना खानु उहाँहरू खाना खाइसक्नु भएको रहेछ त्यति बेला बिहान नै है अनि तपाईँहरूले खाना खानु भएको छैन होला सुमनले खाना खाएर आउनुहोस् र हेलिकप्टरको आवाज सुन्ने बित्तिकै तपाईँ जहाँ भए पनि आउनु भनिसकेपछि अझ भातभित्र जान्छ र हजुर अनि मलाई त्यहाँ आँखामा पट्टी बाँधियो बाहिर गेटमा यसरी अनि माथि है यसरी पट्टी बाँधिदियो अनि चाहिँ त्यो एउटा चौर थियो त्यो चौरमा मलाई राखियो आधा घन्टा कोही बोलेन मैले कतै के हुन्छ कि भनेर सुनेको छु कतै अब अरू आँखाले देखिन्छ छैन तेरा छोरा कति छन् छोरी कति छन् कहाँ पढ्छन् कति गरिस् के गरिस् न त पोखरिया गाडिन्छ नि यता त बन्छ समेत भन्ने कुराहरू भइरहेको छन् र मैले त्यहाँ के जवाब दिएँ म आजभन्दा धेरै पहिला यहाँ आउँदा यही ठाउँ म नाच्ने ठाउँ हो म त्यसमध्ये मैले हेमलाल पुनको पनि मैले नाम ल्याएँ मेरो एउटा साथी हेमलाल पुन पनि आर्मीमा ठुलो मान्छे मेजर छ सुन्नुहोस् अनि त्यो भनिसकेपछि सबै कुराहरू भइसकेपछि अनि मेरा छोराछोरी कति छन् के छन् भन्ने कुरो भइसकेपछि पट्टी खोल्नुहोस् भनेर भन्यो उनले र त्यहाँ अर्को कुर्सी पनि आएको थियो पट्टी नखोल्दै कुर्सी आइसकेको छ अर्को कुर्सी स्ट्यान्ड भइरहेछ अनि मैले खोल्ने बित्तिकै झ्याम्मै हान्ने कि भन्नु पर्यो हो अनि पट्टी खोलेँ मैले पट्टी खोलिसकेपछि अनि तपाईँको एकछिन त मैले त्यहाँ केही पनि देखिनँ होइन अनि कुर्सी बसेर अनि मलाई त्यहाँ मेजर रहेछन् एउटा क्याप्टेन साहब हुनुहुँदो रहेछ पछि परिचय दिनु उहाँहरूले नाम त मलाई थाहा छैन एक हप्ताभित्र माओवादी कहाँ कहाँ छन् के गरिहान् कसो गरिहान् त्यो गतिविधि तपाईँले यहाँ चाहिँ गतिविधि पेस गर्नुपर्छ भनेर मलाई तारिख दिएछ अनि म घर गएँ
The interrogation by the army had made him suspect in the eyes of the Maoists. I have heard many similar stories from the war period.
अनि मलाई तपाईको यसरी पट्टी बाँधिदिए हातमा यसरी हैन अनि भित्र चाहिँ भएको सामानहरू मलाई चाहिनुपर्ने सामानहरू सबै आवश्यक सामानहरू निकालेर लिएर गए र अरू मेरो बेड बिस्तारा शरीरमा लगाउने सबै अङ्गका खाता पातादेखि सबै मेरो हलमा सिनेमा हल थियो मेरो त्यहाँ यसरी तपाईको उनीहरूले पड्काए कि 15 मिनेटभित्र तपाईको ध्वस्त भयो सब बजार आउन सकिरहेको छैन आमा बुवाहरू नबोल्ने अब अचेत अवस्थामा हुनुहुन्छ यताबाट पनि ठोक्न थाले उताबाट पनि ठोक्न थाले तर मारेनन् हात खुट्टो भाँच्दैनन् उहाँहरूलाई यही नै मैले फेरि बताइदिनुपर्छ त्यसपछि के भयो म विस्थापित भएँ आएँ अब यी आफ्नो आफ्नो ठाउँमा छन् मेरो बाबालाई प्रेसर आइभयो प्यारालाइसिस भयो बित्नुभयो त्यो पीडामा म छु जबकि मलाई पोहोर साल बुवा बितिन्जेलसम्म सर म किरियामा बसेँ बाहुन बुवा हाम्रो संस्कार तपाईँलाई थाहा छ जबकि यो म पढ्नै सक्दिनँ खोद लिएर आउँदा दक्षिणा दिने पैसा छैन त्यस्तो पीडा मान्छे पीडा मान्छे धेरै प्रधानमन्त्री बन्छन् यो मुलुकमा हामी यस्तो मान्छे अहिले पनि डर छ अहिले पनि मैले काम गर्छु अहिले पनि चन्दा आतङ्क छ अहिले पनि खतरा छ तर यो म बाध्य भएर म मर्न तयार छु तर मेरो वास्तविक पीडा पक्नुपर्छ
Reaching Tansen, we pass by 2 wartime monuments. The scenic Srinagar Hotel, perched on the hill over the city, became scene of a decisive battle. Bullet holes are testimony to the drama here in early 2005. The Maoists' victory boosted their morale and demoralized the monarch-led security forces, paving the way for a political negotiated solution. During the battle, the Maoists torched Palpa Palace in order to destroy all district government functions. Others who witnessed the palace being consumed by flames saw this as a criminal act of heritage destruction. Now, under restoration, it will once again serve as a chief district office. Can the restored building become a symbol for a new era, where the state serves all equally well? You said your father hated this place in a way.
Yes.
He hated it.
My father hated this place. When my father was traveling to Butwal, he saw an army man, Rana. He said, okay, come here. And he was supposed to work for several days. He said, okay, I want to go home. But he was given simple food. अब मलाई के लाग्छ भने यो बन्दैछ नि यो चाहिँ नि अहिले बन्नु चाहिँ नि सेटै सकारात्मक पक्ष छ है तर एउटा कुरा चाहिँ बिल्डिङहरु जसरी भत्कियो हैन त्यस्तै नेपालको सामाजिक सोशल हार्मनी also can we repair? The question is like this, block by block, brick by brick. That's very important. Building, it can be constructed, reconstructed. Can we reconstruct our social harmony? Can we get it back again? That's very important question.
The last hours of our journey was traveled in a dusty Indian jeep on a Hare Pinnacle road. This road Hem's co-villagers had constructed manually in a difficult terrain in order to get a modern transport lifeline. Barsa, eventually, surrounded by ancient temples, old forts, and lush forests. We were invited into their amazing forest. They showed us their sacred sites for shamanistic ancestor worship. We are in the jungle searching for Barsa's mining history. The kings used to own not only all the lands, but also the minerals beneath the earth. The king's revenue system compelled the villagers to pay their taxes in molten metal. The villagers had to vacate their farmhouses and move to temporary huts in the lush jungle, which hid many copper ores. They had only simple hammers and chisels to dig out the ores, rendering their work extremely arduous.
एउटा कुरा हेर्दाखेरि झट्ट सर हामीले गर्व पनि गर्नु पर्यो। यति दुःख गरेर हाम्रा पिता पुर्खाहरूले यति दुःख गरेर यो समाजलाई बनाए, यो देशलाई बनाए, नेपाल भनेर राखे। यसैको आम्दानी भएर त हिजोको आम्दानीले यो देश र शासकहरू या हामी सबै बाँचे नेपाल रहिरहेको छ। वास्तवमा नेपाल लडेर या सेना या कुनै नेताले मात्र बनाएको छैन। नेपाल त हिजो आज चाहिँ अरब या चाहिँ अमेरिका या कहाँबाट एड आइरहेछ, पैसा ल्याछन् हैन, ले पनि टिकिरह होला। तर हिजोको हाम्रो पुर्खाको र यो समाज र यो देशको इतिहासलाई अड्याएको र यो अस्तित्व जुन छ आज यो खानेले हो। वास्तविक आम्दानी यो हो र निकै दुःख गरे। त्यो त देखिहाल्नु कसरी भाङ बाने, यत्रो पहरामा आएर कसरी छिनो खनेर कुन दुःख गरे। ल भाङै मात्र लिनको लागि पनि यहाँबाट आफरे भन्ने ठाउँ छ, थाप्ले भन्ने मुनि, पम्फुका भन्दा माथि झन्डै 2-2.5 घन्टा 3 घन्टा लाग्ला। त्यहाँ गएर पहिला त्यो पनि आफ्नो मौसममा भाङ काटेर त्यसपछि त्यो भाङलाई पानीमा भिजाएर सर्टेन कति निश्चित समयपछि निकालेर फेरि सुकाएर अनि भाङ बनाएर त्यो भाङ चाहिँ फेरि बानेर अर्कलेर यहाँ राखेर बानेर भित्र पसेर खन्थे र त्यो भाङको धुवाले खानीमा काम गर्नेहरू धेरै बाँच्दैन थिए अरे भनेर हाम्रा जिजुबाजुहरूले भन्थे।
The ore-laden stones were melted in the forest rim. The melted metal was transported along treacherous paths for handover to waiting government officials. The rulers used the precious metal to make weapons, tools, and coins. Barsa's most famous export has been sending its able-bodied young men as soldiers, first in British and Indian Gurkha brigades and later in the National Army of Nepal. This traffic in young boys was established by the Rana rulers as part of their goodwill-oriented foreign policy with the British Empire. Mogar boys from Barsa and the surrounding region were allured by Galewalas. These special British recruitment agents promised adventure in foreign lands, stable earnings, and prospect for military orders for bravery during battle. As the day was closing in, we were shown the locality's temple and its impressive collection of ancient rusty weapons.
To the Maoist, when the Maoist operation was going here, before that, I think maybe 40 or 50 years.
Yes,
before 40 or 50 years.
in this
The government provide the money also to conduct this temple.
Right.
But after that, we manage ourselves.
Right. The weapons worshipped inside the temple and also used in the ritual dances dramatizing Bursa's warrior history reveal a hidden story. They are made of a mix of copper and iron, copper being the metal the people here were forced to produce to pay their taxes. The martial culture of these hill people weaves two main narratives. One about the lives and heroic battle of legendary Magar chieftains who ruled before the unification of Nepal. The other narrative is visible in the worship of the blood-demanding goddess Durga. Bleeding sacrificial animals symbolize the worshippers' sacrifices, sending their sons as Gorkhas to defend the sovereignty of their own Hindu kingdom and of the British India. Can these blood-shedding sacrificial rituals be changed? Granted, hardly any young boys in the future need to be recruited for soldiering service risking their lives? I simply wonder when my host honors me, helping me to release pigeons in the name of Durga, requesting her blessings for peace instead of war. Already, during the rooftop dinner when we first met, Hem revealed his devotion to his ancestral farm, which his sister Maya now runs on behalf of all the siblings. Etched in my mind are his words about the occupation of their home and Maya's displacement. We are walking towards Hem's and Maya's farm. The well-trodden trail is paved with huge stones expended by Hem's grandfather after he returned as a pensioner from his service as a Gorkha. The prospects of seeing Maya fills me with excitement.
Hey! Lo mai pugi. एउटा सँगै लिएर आछु मैले है ल
नमस्कार
मेरो साथी
सन्चै छ
फिल्म बनाउनको लागि आएको
सन्चै छ We can finally sit down with Maya and hear her account of what she has been through and why they didn't mobilize the army.
7 गतिको 7 बजे आयो 40 जना आयो म पहिला गुहार माग्न गएँ गाउँमा उनीहरूले थाहा नपाउने गरी म लुकेर स्वाट्टै भागे पर बहिनीलाई सोधेँ यहाँ भने कोही मुख पर्न सकिन कोही आउन सकिन पर एउटा बहिनी थियो माथि गएर ठप्पक्क बस्यौँ दुई बहिनी चाहिँ खामै पुगेछौँ यहाँबाट उसले भन्नु बहिनीले भन्नु नजाम दिदी आज नजाम हामीलाई मार्छ भन्नु भयो जाम मार्छ जाम एकपटक के गर्छ उनीहरूले मारे भन्यौँ आयौँ झऱ्यौँ हामी आफै पकान्छौँ भन्यो आँटो छ कि छैन आँटो त भने चामल छ कि छैन छ भने त्यहाँ त भाँडैसित निकाल्ने बाहिर दुधले भन्यो मलाई घिउले भन्यो त्यहाँ मैले भाँडैसित निकाल्ने दुईजना यहाँ सुत्यो ठुल अलि नेता जस्ता अरू यहाँ सुत्यो आइमाई जति त्यहाँ सुत्यो हामी बहिनी र म फुपूको छोरी र म माथि गयौँ तलामा सुत्न रात रातैभरि हामी सुतिनौँ निराइनौँ रातैभरि छर्लङ्ग बहिनी यहाँ सुतेछ म यहाँ सुतेँ उठ्छौँ उठेर फेरि अब हामीलाई मार्छ आज भन्छौँ फेरि तल सुन्ने रहेछ तलकोले उठ्यौँ भाले बास्यो उठ्यौँ आज दिदी बहिनी आज निरानु भएको छैन हजुरहरू भन्नु निरा छैनौँ भन्यो हामीले केही गर्दैनौँ भन्यो बरु मलाई मार भाइलाई नमार भने मैले तेरो केही बिराम छैन भन्यो आर्मीकोलाई हामीले देख्न चाहेको छैनौँ भन्यो फेरि आर्मीकोलाई गर्दा लड्दा खोज्दा के गर्दा प्रत्येक महिनामा आछ बसेछ खाछ गाछ आछ बसेछ खाछ गएछ अहिले 3 वर्ष भयो बल्ल आमा छोरीको पोहोर आएको थियो त्यो पहिला मलाई कैद दिएको थियो नि जे पनि कैद दिएको थियो पहिला मलाई खानै नदिने बस्नै नदिने बाहिरै निकाल्ने मैले ढुङ्गामा थिचेर खाएँ गोठमा असाध्यै कैद दियो मलाई त भाइको लागि मैले त केही गरेछ नि थिएँ
This was the time when Hem was undergoing treatment after he was ambushed. Years after the occupation, Maya still can't comprehend why Hem, herself and the other siblings have not gotten any public apology from the local or the central Maoist leadership.
सबको घरमा तालाबन्दी गर्छ भने मेरो चित्त बुझ्न थियो उसको 16 जनाको आर्मी प्रहरी गरेर 16 जना थियो उसैले भन्यो उसको ठुट्नुबाट भन्यो पहिला भन्यो मलाई सोध्यो कसको कुन घर हो आर्मी र प्रहरी भन्यो मलाई थाहा छैन भने किन थाहा छैन भन्छस् भन्नु थाहा छैन मलाई भने अब म यही गाउँमा यही घरमा बाँच्न पर्छ मर्न पर्छ मैले अरूलाई किन लाने किन दुश्मन गराउने अरूलाई जे भयो मेरै टाउको फुट्यो अरूको टाउको किन फुटाल्ने भने मैले कसैलाई पनि पोलिन धारामा लगेर सोध्यो मलाई मैले कसैलाई पनि बताइन अब के भनौँ भनेपछि त्यसले तैँले बताइन ठिक छ हामीलाई थाहा छ 16 जना छ भार्सेमा भनौँ मलाई थाहा छैन भने अरूलाई केही गरिन अरूको छोरा छोरी डुलै आमा बाउ एकदम ठारसीले हिँड्यो टक 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 ठारसीले हिँड्यो तर मलाई घोप्टो शिर गरायो
The occupation of her beloved ancestral home and her time being displaced still pains her. So does other hardship during the war years, managing everything on a large farm and feeding a big group of guerrillas every month for years. Maya, now in her mid-60s, still works from dawn to dusk with the help of a few villagers. In her adult years, she has lived through a massive migration from this once thriving village. Not only has she faced the loss of her dear parents and other elderly relatives, all her 7 siblings left, and so many other younger co-villagers. Many houses in Barsa are now uninhabited. Spider nets cover closed doors. No laughter and buzz from children and animals can be heard. The nearby homes of Hem's and Maya's respectable clan are also empty. One lonely person in each house. Lonely is also Maya, but she doesn't talk about such feelings. She simply continues her dedicated work as so many other women farmers in Nepal. The occasional arrival of her brother fills her with exuberance to cook a sumptuous meal for him and welcome him in her best spirit. Barsa lived through more than 10 years of armed conflict. Ever since I first met Hem, I have wondered, how did they cope? I wanted to understand how Barsa was one of the places that managed to silence the guns. Barsa saved itself from any bloodshed. This village, with its history of bravery and solidarity, had they faced torture, abduction and pressure to be informers? Why had they acted so apparently passively to the occupation of Ham's and Maya's home? What was their thinking about justice by use of law, in contrast to reconciliation?
But then you also have your experiences during the conflict. Some experienced, like for example in the case of Hem, who is my host here, his farm was occupied, and I know that he has really encouraged the Maoists to call for a public reconciliation, so that at least they recognize that occupation was a mistake. Now, so far there hasn't been any response to that. Others might have felt that the security forces has acted in ways also which was highly objectionable. So what do you feel you can do at this level to work for reconciliation? You who had such a good spirit of pulling forces together, what can you do to promote that from the local level?
I think people should work through reconciliation, and the people who involved in the Maoist activities, and they have changed their attitude also, and we also changed our attitude towards them. And people, they began to live in harmony and in coordination. And the situation, I think, is quite different. Therefore, our attitude towards them and their attitude towards us is also quite friendly. And therefore, we can live in harmony. Therefore, I think reconciliation is possible. Yeah.
This courtyard discussion baffled me. Some were victims of torture. They told Maoist top leaders had visited during the height of the conflict. Even so, they had deliberately tried their uttermost not to engage with the warring parties. Every household had pensioned Gurkhas who understood fully the dangers of getting engaged. Still, there were limits to their ability to stay neutral. These limits were tested when Hem and Maya's farm was occupied, because one of their own served as a soldier for the state party. The village was suddenly caught in a painful dilemma. They realized their reaction should be peaceful resistance. These discussions convinced me their behavior should not be understood as fatalism, cowardness, or passiveness, a failure for their repute as one of the country's most famous warrior villages. I wanted, nevertheless, to ask him directly, why didn't he and his influential brothers mobilize the Nepalese army to free Maya?
सहनु भन्ने कुरो ज्यादै साहसको कुरा हो। म एम्बुसमा परेर घाइते हुनु ठुलो कुरा होइन, त्यो एउटा मेरो पेशा थियो। तर एउटा अज्ञान निर्दोष दिदीलाई, त्यो घरलाई कब्जा गरेर दिदीलाई कब्जा गर्नु भन्ने कुरो निश्चय नै सानो कुरो होइन। त्यो मेरो घाइते हुनु, हस्पिटल जानु, मर्नु भन्दा त्यो ज्यादै संवेदनशील, मानवीय संवेदनशीलता, सामाजिक न्याय, प्राकृतिक न्यायसँग सम्बन्धित त्यो पक्ष थियो। र यो गाउँको पुस्तौं पुस्तादेखि मेरा भार्सेदी कैयौं पुस्तादेखिका मेरा अग्रजहरूले बगाएको पसिना रगतले बनेको त्यो गाउँ हो। दिदीको लागि, व्यक्तिगत एउटा दिदीकोलाई बचाउनको लागि के त्यो खाडा बनाउने, के हिजोको सीतालाई जोगाउँदा लङ्का जलाए जस्तो जलाउने, के द्रौपदीको लागि कौरव र पाण्डवहरूको महाभारत लडे जस्तो त्यो लड्ने र के अर्को खाडा, अर्को रोल्पा मेरो गाउँलाई बनाउने? त्यो त्यस्तो किसिमको कारबाहीबाट कहिले पनि शान्ति स्थापना हुन सक्दैन। शान्ति विभिन्न पक्षहरूबाट हुन्छ, त्यसका माध्यमहरू धेरै जटिल र फरकहरू हुन्छन्। त्यसमध्ये कुनै एउटा माध्यमहरू अपनाइएको थियो होला, त्यसैले त्यो कारबाही केही गरिएन।
His explanation is revealing. Driving the Maoists off the farm by mobilizing the army was never an option. It would have resulted in a tit-for-tat reaction. The human costs were too large, and Barsa's social harmony irreparably damaged. Hem and his family had simply called for a public apology from the responsible Maoist commanders and political leaders. 6 years after the incident, they are still hoping for this apology. The second day after my arrival, I am invited to a festival. The villagers said, "Come with us and find peace during the full moon night." Dancing and singing has revived in this village with the same vigor where it stopped more than a decade ago. These recitations describe the war between demons and gods as idealistic. These performances under the full moon reminded me of the very idea of war in Ramayana and Mahabharata. The villains and the heroes of a once-upon-a-time war are glorified and hymns are dedicated to their acts of valor. I see and feel happiness in people dancing under the moonlight as they did yearly for generations before the civil war broke out. But in my thoughts I am also elsewhere, thinking of our return journey and the possibility of meeting Maoist political leaders where I could raise the issue of reconciliation. On the road, we get news that the two prominent Maoist leaders are ready to talk with us. Both are among the first women to join the PLA. Later, they were promoted as commanders. Now, these two famous guerrilla fighters are parliamentarians and live in the capital. I spoke with the two politicians about the incident in Barsa. My question to you, given this very sad circumstance, could you as women leader take the initiative to a reconciliation process in cases like this, so that actually there could be a meeting, for example, held in that village with your top-ranking cadre, where you could openly and publicly give an excuse for that kind of occupation?
यदि त्यो रियल रिपोर्ट हो भने हाम्रो पार्टीले कुनै कन्जुसाइ गर्दैन कि जनतामा भएको कमी कमजोरीहरू हामी सहृदय हामी चाहिँ पुरै आत्मग्लानीका साथ उहाँसँग हामी क्षमा माग्न तयार छौं र आइन्दा त्यस्तो पनि नहोस् भन्ने कामना पनि हामी गर्न चाहन्छौं।
पहिलेदेखि हामीले हाम्रो पार्टीबाट भएका कमी कमजोरीहरूको महसुस भयो भनेपछि हामीले क्षमा याचना माग्दै पनि आइराखेका छौं र यदि त्यो उहाँले पनि भनिसक्नु भएको छ रियल रिपोर्ट हो भनेपछि हामीले त्यसलाई चाहिँ क्षमा माग्नमा हामी पछि पर्दैनौं भन्न चाहन्छु।
if you as women leaders and prominent members of the party take charge of such reconciliation measures, we also express that yes, there are mistakes done, there are injustices done, and you are openly up for apologies and other forms of reconciliation measures, I think you would be spearheading the peace process in Nepal, and we could perhaps break the deadlock we see now.
अब सहमतिको रान्ति नै हामीले चाहिँ यो 12 बुँदे समझदारदेखि यता भन्दै आएको प्रश्न हो। यदि हामी सहमति र समझदारीमा आउँदैन थियौँ भने हामीसँग त कडा एजेन्डाहरू छन् जो हाम्रो आफ्नो अडान पनि हो पार्टीको, र यसमा चाहिँ अब हामी लचिलो नभइदिएको भए शान्ति सम्झौता पनि हुँदैन थियो। र तपाईहरुलाई उदाहरणको लागि एउटा मात्रै कुरा गर्छु म, पार्टीहरुसँग अब समझदारीमा आउनकै लागि संघीयताको प्रश्नमा हामी एउटा चाहिँ लचिलो निर्णय गरेका थियौं, जसले गर्दाखेरि मधेस आन्दोलन भयो। एवं प्रकारले हामीले चाहिँ भनेको त नौलो जनवाद हो नि त, तर आज हामी लोकतन्त्रमा आयौं। लोकतन्त्रमा एउटा समझदारी गरेर हामी अगाडि बढिराखेका छौं र पटक हाम्रो अध्यक्ष कमरेड प्रचण्डले भनेको तपाईहरुले सुन्नु भएको छ, हामी सहमतिबाटै अगाडि बढ्ने हो। हामीलाई पटक उत्तेजित गरिन्थ्यो। एउटा विद्रोही पार्टी जसले चाहिँ लामो समय बन्दुक उठाएर लडेको थियो, उतिखेर चेन्ज हुन्न भन्ने त यो समाजले बुझ्नु पर्यो नि। तैपनि हामीले स्थितिलाई आफ्नो काबुमा लिनको लागि अध्यक्ष प्रचण्डले पटक आत्मआलोचना पनि गर्नुभएको छ र आफ्ना मान्छेहरू जेलमा पनि राख्नु भएको छ। तपाईहरुले आज पनि हेर्न जानुस्, अब हाम्रो आफ्नो मेम्बरहरूलाई आफैले हामीले जेलमा बुझाएका छौं। सायद कुनै विद्रोही पार्टीले मलाई लाग्छ त्यो स्तरसम्मको साहस चाहिँ गर्न सक्दैन। त्यसैले हामी चाहिँ सहमतिकै रान्तिमा अडिग छौं। अहिले पनि शान्ति प्रक्रियालाई अगाडि बढाउनको निम्ति हामी चाहिँ दृढतापूर्वक लागि परेका छौं र हाम्रो आफ्नै मात्रै सही हो भन्नेमा हामी छैनौं। नेपाली जनताले के भनेको छ त्यो मूल प्रश्न हो र नेपाली जनताले भनेको कुराहरुमा उहाँहरु पनि आउनै पर्छ। तपाईहरु विश्वास गर्नुस्, हामीले आज पनि बन्दुक उठाएर जंगलबाट पड्काउला भन्ने सोचेका छैनौं। त्यो नसोच्नुको मूल कारण चाहिँ नेपाली जनताले शान्ति चाहेको छ, नेपाली जनताले युद्ध अब रुचाएको छैन, नेपाली जनताले रगत बगाउन तयार छैन। यही कुरामा हामी अडिग छौं र हामी प्रयत्नरत छौं। हामी फेरि पनि समझदारीमै पुग्छौं भन्ने आशावादी तथा हामीलाई विश्वास पनि छ।
Again, on the rooftop where we started out, I feel excited, thoughtful and hopeful. As Hem and Maya, many other thousands have similarly felt the painful realities of armed violence on their bodies and minds. Some of these were extraordinary people I met on this journey. They call out for a just peace based on forgiveness and reconciliation. Can they become an irresistible force which can heal the wounds of the past and silence the guns?